man. Okay, so clearly we are having the week. We are having a week. I don't. Sometimes we make changes and we completely forget about the changes we've made. And therefore, you end up in situations such as this. But welcome to Girl Listen. I was like, I could have sworn this was a 4:30 p.m. program, but not so much, Gwendolyn. Not so much. Sometimes when you do a lot, you find yourself in some interesting positions. And so, yeah. But first, let me do this. Let me just say welcome to all those who are here. We are streaming live to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So thank you all for tuning in. Let us know where you're tuning in from, like what social media platform and what city. If you choose to do that, we would love to shout you out. So let us know where you're tuning in from. And then I have to give a thank you. So as I mentioned last week, this is a 3-part series, it's part 2. As I mentioned last week, this is the second time I have done something of this nature where we share all the things. Like, this is the second time we've done it. And the response is the same, right? Like, I love getting comments from people. I love it. It's interesting that people feel more comfortable sometimes doing a private message. So shout out to my sister who called me afterwards and told me she was in tears because she just didn't know some of these things about her little sister. So shout out to my big sister there. And then also to a few other people, Sarah, who tuned in into the replay, who shared her message and her story. So shout out to Sarah. And then, of course, Spencer. Spencer is always supporting and always showing up. So thank you to all those who sent comments and or called and just said, hey, I am shocked. Like, the person I see before me, I would have never thought that you were that person. But here's the deal. Like, we're all evolving, right? We are all evolving and transforming, if you will, and moving to, hopefully, a better version of ourselves, right? And in order to do that, that requires some work. It requires some work. I was at an event Tuesday, and the young lady asked me, she's like, oh my God, you're married. How long have you been married? What is the secret to a great marriage? Now, there's not like a lot of secrets, honestly. But I said, you know what? Here's the deal I will say. You need to be a whole person before you go into any relationship, right? Like, your partner does not complete you. They complement you, right? They're not responsible for your happiness or anything else. That's not their job. You got to do the work before you go into a relationship. So sitting down and doing the work, and again, I highly suggest for those who need it, you talk to a counselor or a therapist, because sometimes there's some really hard work that needs to be done. But I highly suggest it because it takes a lot. So we're doing this verbally versus written. And I mentioned before that the blog post I did for Pop Sugar years ago, it was titled Nude Bunny. Nude is more than naked. Now, granted, clearly that was a clickbait title, which I don't recall we even had clickbait as a word at that point. But it is a clickbait title. I wouldn't dare try to look for Nude Bunny in this day and age. You're not going to get the same kind of thing. You're just not going to get it. But the whole idea is that, removing your clothes is easy. That's easy. What's really hard is looking in the mirror and truly holding yourself accountable and recognizing who you're looking at, like, for all the things. And a lot of us have some, I guess we'll call them skeletons in the closet that we kind of believe if someone was to find out about something about us, that it would make us be less than, or it would be revealing this awful secret. And they span the gamut. I mean, I was talking to someone recently that, there was a time where talking about being dyslexic was something you just didn't do, right? Like you just didn't talk about it because it was something that was like, ugh. But now people openly talk about their learning disabilities, their speech impediments, any kind of impairments. Like we talk about all the things now, whereas before we were hiding in the shadows when it came to those things. So I know I mentioned last week, one of my blog posts was about my speech impediment, the fact that, I stutter. But again, I say this all the time. All the greats do, right? Like Bruce Willis, James Earl Jones, John Stossel, President Biden. What can I tell you? What can I tell you? But I always find it interesting that the first three took jobs that put them in the spotlight that requires a lot of conversation. Like one's a news broadcaster, the other two are actors. What? Yeah, gotta love it, right? But as I mentioned last week, that was a hard one. As a kid, whew, Lord, you get picked on for stuff like that. And you're hesitant to say anything because you're not sure you can get the words out. And then you rush to get all the words out. So that becomes hard. Yeah, that was a hard one. That was a hard one. Now, do things happen from time to time? It depends on how I'm feeling. Every now and then you kind of get tongue-tied, but that's a natural thing. Like getting tongue-tied, doing like alliterations and things, that's not like it's that, off the cuff. But people do talk about the fact that, being able to speak clearly without any ums and ahs and likes, what have you, and all depends. Well, if I was doing a class or speaking on stage or something, then of course there's a different presentation style there. But for stuff like this, I'm gonna use some likes and ums and ahs and all that stuff, all the fillers. I'm gonna use all the fillers. But as I mentioned, once Gwendolyn found her voice, man, you cannot put that genie back into the bottle. It was not happening. It was not happening. So what else did I share years ago that I thought if anybody found out, they would probably like make fun of me or laugh at me, or things that I felt made me less than? Well, we'll go to the biggest one, which was a breast biopsy when I was a senior in high school, right? Winter break was a day's surgery and healing from that surgery. And again, as a kid, and I'm thinking truly as a kid, my first thought when I changed that bandage was, I can now never pose nude for Playboy. Don't even ask me why that was a thought. I'm just saying it was there, okay? It was there. But I thought about it because I saw this god-awful scar. And I immediately thought, okay, there goes halter tops or bikini tops. And how do you hide this scar? Now, we have a thing about scars, too. There's a place where you don't want to see any scars for some people. And then there's also a place where the scars tell your story. So we love to see the scars. I have no problem showing my scar. None. But I would be a liar if I said that when it first happened, I wasn't extra sensitive about the attack on my womanhood. And breast cancer tends to do that, right? Any kind of cancer that impacts a woman being feminine, if you will, attacks that whole idea of, am I woman enough? Right? So at some point, as you go through all the mammograms, and some of the mammograms come back with that funny, take a second test kind of thing, you start thinking, what would this be like? Am I still going to be a woman if I don't have my breasts? Right? Now, granted, I cut my hair because we decided what our ideal beauty was for myself. I think it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. But I remember moving to the Dallas area and going into stores and meeting women who were in the midst of chemo. And the question became, are you a warrior? And I was like, no, I am not. This is by choice. And I'm like, oh my God, like, how did you feel about it? Like, what's the process? Because it is an attack. We know that the society believes that persons with long hair are feminine, right? So if you're a guy with long hair, they look at you funny. And we know some of these school dress codes and whatnot are so archaic and ridiculous. But But that's when the masks that we wear is our hair. We put a lot of strength into our hair, into like our body, because that's what makes us feminine, right? And so when a disease attacks that, you can easily feel less than. That's an easy one. But nowadays we shout it out, right? We just be like, bam, that's what, but there's also more conversations about it too. But we do get over it. Another one that I shared. Okay, so I didn't get a license until I moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which I know for some people are like, wait, what? Weren't you born in Texas? Yes, I was. I was born in Texas, but I didn't really need it. I didn't think I needed it, right? Because my whole idea was I don't want to have to deal with anything. So, and I still believe to a certain point that driving is highly overrated. So we didn't get a license until I was in my wee 30s. The wee 30s, we decided, because in Texas, you have to have a vehicle. Like, you're not going to get around without one. So I remember I took the written test when I was 16, 17. I took it, and then I went away for the summer, and that was it. I just didn't come back. We never went back to take the driving part. Not that my dear cousin did not give me lessons like everybody does in the country. I just didn't bother. So it wasn't until I moved back that I went and got the driver's permit. The very next day, I went out and bought a car with the driver's permit. And let's go ahead and say this. When they want to sell something, they're going to sell something. And then from there, I hit the freeway to to move. So we did quite a bit very fast. Everybody doesn't drive, and everyone doesn't have a license, even if you're born in a state like Texas. But for a while, I was a little hesitant to tell people, oh, no, I don't drive. And nowadays, I pretty much run people over because they drive too slow. But I just knew that would be one of my secrets that would just, and it still gets looked. And people are like, wait, how long have you had your license? It hasn't been that long. Let me just say that. But not to worry. When you're living in this state and driving in Houston, you get in where you fit in. So you will quickly learn how to figure that out. I will say that. But I'm going to get into some more serious things here real quick. Some more serious things. So I have always shared that, my nephew being born when I was in high school, it did change the way that I looked at living my life. Not that I didn't think I wanted kids. I wasn't really sure, honestly. And then he came along. And so, having a baby in the house when you're a teenager, you kind of become like this teen mom by proxy. And it changed my life. Absolutely. I could have been the poster child for abstinence. I took that chastity belt, I locked the sucker, and I threw away the key because I was like, this is not happening. There's no way in the world this is ever happening. Because I immediately thought, what do I want to do? Right? So not that I don't love my nephew dearly, and all my nieces and nephews, but just going through that process changed my life. I was scared straight. I was scared straight. So much so that I'm perfectly fine in saying this because I wrote about it. But it wasn't until I was 30 something that I said, well, maybe we're not going to get married. And I wasn't even sure if I wanted to get married or that it would happen. So those two things were happening at the same time, like those two thoughts. And so it wasn't until I was 30 something that I decided I'm either going to go ahead and break this vow of abstinence, or I'm going to be a nun. It's going to be one of those two things. But that was 30 something. Not 40, but 30 something. But there's something else that goes along with that story of not having kids. One, I did realize I'm not that responsible. I'm not. I love my niece and nephews. I love my grandkids even, right? I love them better as they get older. So like with the grandson being able to go out and roller skate and do all the fun things, that's great. The grandbaby being a baby that cries, I'm like, oh my God, can I do it? I don't know if I can do it, right? But we love them. So I realized I'm really not that responsible. There is a portion of me that, I don't want to call it selfish, but I'm about Gwendolyn. I want to go where I want to travel. I want to do all these things and not worry about another person who needs me to dress them, feed them, get them to point A to point B, like all of that. But my history of surgeries, I have to admit, got me thinking. So at one point, there was this really weird cyst thing that was happening that I had to have surgery for. And so when they did some blood work years later, the doctor did the whole entire deal, like from soup to nuts, the whole entire deal. And he comes back and he says, Gwendolyn, you are a sickle cell carrier. So if you have a partner who is also a carrier, be aware that your child could have sickle cell anemia. And I thought, oh, really? Now, on the list of reasons for me to not have kids, this was like maybe number 4 or 5, right? It wasn't number 1. Number 1 was I'm just selfish. And actually, I shouldn't even call it selfish because not everybody's meant to be somebody's parent. I'm just going to put that out there, right? I have auntie vibes. I have auntie vibes. I'm gaining the grandma vibes. I have auntie vibes. But I did think about it. It was definitely on the list. And there was a part of me that said, because of all the surgeries I had had, I wasn't sure if I wanted to take a chance that it wouldn't go well for me. You know what I mean? That's a real deal. People believe that getting pregnant and having a baby is an easy thing. It is not an easy thing, first of all, by no means. It's not easy. It's not easy to get pregnant. And then 2, to carry that pregnancy for 9 months, extra hard. So I got to thinking on that list of the 5 things of why I'm thinking I don't want to try this. That was on the top 5. It was, maybe it's not going to work out for me because my body has had some really jacked up situations. I mean, I started collecting wristbands. And sometimes you're thinking, do I want to go down this road? Probably not. It's probably not. But that was definitely in the back of my head. It was like, I don't know if I want to try this. I don't know. Now, granted, marriage has given me some beautiful grandchildren, right? Again, I love them dearly. If anything, I think it's the way to go, depending on what you want to do. But hearing that news and knowing that my body had done things that I just, I was like, when am I not going to be in the hospital for something that's not like out of pocket? Like I just want to know. But that was there. So when I wrote all of these blog posts about the things that I felt were holding me back, holding me hostage from being audacious, living my truth, doing all the things. It was very freeing because you're putting it out into the world, right? Like you're putting it out there. It's on the internet. Not anymore, but it was on the internet. And it was the messages that were coming in where people were like, I felt the exact same way. I had that concern too. I'm currently going through chemo. I still don't have my license and I'm 35 years old. Like you realize that you are, just by chance, creating a space that is safe for other people to privately share their story. Because in their head, just like mine, I thought, this is the worst thing that could ever be. And turns out, it's really not that big a deal. It's just really not. It's not that big a deal. But in the moment, I thought, if anyone ever found this out, oh my God, what would happen? Right? And it wasn't so much about if others found out, but it was just even me acknowledging and recognizing, this is my story. This is my story. Why not tell this story? So I do know that every September I go in like an old car for my checkups. We go in, we do the mammogram, we do all the womanly health things, right? We're having that conversation. Which, let me just go back real quick because I skipped over. I speak lightly about the health thing. So I want to say about maybe 3 years now, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years now, There was another scare, right? God bless it, my body. God bless it. And shout out to my brother. What's going on there, man? What's going on? There was a scare where the body was doing some weird things. And my doctor said, okay, I don't want you to get nervous, but I need you to see an oncologist. I'm like, okay. All right. She said, now, here's the deal. 1 or 2 things could be happening. Let me just tell you. 1 or 2 things. One, she says, you could be pregnant. And I was like, hell no. No, that ain't even it. So you need to go ahead on and tell me something else, doctor. And she was like, Gwendolyn, you can get pregnant. I was like, no, we can't. Right? Like, that's not happening. It's not happening. And I want to say was it right before or right after? I can't remember. But I was very clear to her. I was like, no. And her nurse was like, oh my God, look, lady, everybody trying to have a baby. So no. She's like, okay, great. Well, the other results of what's happening to you right now could be that you have a brain tumor. I was like, because that makes sense, right? We go from, you could either be pregnant or you could have a brain tumor. So, I called my dad. I was like, hey, Pops, what's going on? He's like, hey, how did your test go? And I said, well, we got 1 or 2 things. I could either be pregnant or I could have a brain tumor. And he says, well, which one do you want? And I was like, I think I might take the brain tumor. He thought, my baby. Turns out, as we go to the oncologist and do more tests, she was like, no, everything's good. You are past the age where it could have been breast cancer, because they were looking for that again. She's like, you're past that age, so this is not that. And she goes into like some other details about all the things that women have to deal with. And I thought, oh man. So is there a place where when I see something going on and here that I'm thinking, oh, let's just add it to the list? Yes, there is. I don't worry about anything. I don't really think about it anymore. I just kind of go in and go with it. because at this point we've done so much. But ask yourself, when you look at your own story, is there anything that you believe that this is holding me back? That if someone knew this secret, this defect, that it's holding me back? I mean, technically, we're all mutants, aren't we? Like, everybody has something. Even our face, although it looks like it's symmetrical. No. I have one. I know that this eye is wonky. This is my one wonky eye. And if you ever look at my photos carefully, you will notice that this eye is really open and this eye is like trying to figure out what to do. So we're really not as put together as we seem. But nude is more than being naked. It is bearing your soul. It is being honest with yourself, and then perhaps even a few others. Even a few others. Just like, I don't know, a few hundred, maybe? One or two. So next week, as we wrap up this series of talking about the self, we're going to look at the continuing journey, because I have said more than once that there is an active war on women, and starts from the moment a little girl enters this world. She is told through multiple images and words, other actions, that she's less than, she is not desirable, she is a second-class citizen, right? Like all those things, they start at a very young age. From the commercials that we put out about women to, well, it used to be music videos. Now it's everything. It's social media. It's the movies. There's so many messages all over the place. I think to myself, I don't know if I could have made it. I mean, granted, I had parents who often told us we were made in God's image. And that actually played a huge part of my own self-awareness. Huge part. My mother often tells me how my dad, when I was born, thought I was the most beautiful baby he's ever seen. And my mom reminds me that when she looked at me, she was like, "What child were you looking at?" And I'm like, "Really, mother? Seriously?" I mean, I've seen the photos. I was, a little different. But giving these positive messages to your children, they make a difference. They make a huge difference. Huge. And shout out to Angelique. Thank you for tuning in. Man. So next week, I want to talk about the journey that, even though I have come this far with defining who I am, living my own truth, enjoying all that is Gwendolyn, it's a constant journey. I don't ever go back. I want to make that clear. Like, Gwendolyn doesn't go back. As I was telling someone, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get under my skin. Like, I've had people try. You have to try harder. You really are. Because I am truly all about G's. Like, I have no problem telling the next woman, "Girl, you're looking good," and feeling good about myself, right? Like, I can do that. I have no problem sharing the spotlight with other business owners because I am solid in who I am. Got no problems. Zero. But that doesn't mean that I still don't recognize the things going on, right? Like, here I am, a grown woman, and I can't even make decisions for my own body. What? Seriously? At this age? Because you might want to have kids. No, that's not happening. I already said that. It's not happening. But that's where we are. So we're going to talk about loving yourself, doing the work. And I keep saying it, counselor or therapist cannot hurt. It cannot hurt. And we'll even share next week Man, my bout with depression. Ugh, yes, everybody has some highs and lows. And I would never forget when my mother walked in and she was like, "You haven't had a bath in like 3 to 4 days, and you're just sitting here. You want to talk about it?" Yeah, that will be next week. That will be next week. So if I may, enjoy your weekend. And you know what? Wait a minute. Time out. Time out. I forget. There's so much going on. If you're going to be around, you don't have anything else to do, I'm going to invite you to join me later on today as I do talk to other business owners and other photographers. As a matter of fact, that'll be on the other show, Small Biz Bites, that's later on today. That'll be great. But do tune in next week. We're going to talk about self-love, self-awareness, all those things, all the things. But thank you for tuning in today. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Be safe.